And were you ever an embedded reporter? Are you familiar with that?
Not like you were, no.
So when you're embedded, you're basically just attached to a group of people in the desert, taking care of people at the point of injury. And so, you know, you're together all the time. And when you cover conflict, 90% of the time is boredom, and 10% of the time, nobody each other's kids, dreams, everything. And they obviously knew I was a neurosurgeon, and they didn't have. It was in the middle of the Shamal sandstorm, bad sandstorm. They came to me and they said, "Hey, a young lieutenant has been shot in the head." And initially they thought he was dead, but they went back to get him, and he had a pulse, and they were bringing him into the Devil Dogs camp. So we were just outside of Baghdad in these tents, and they basically said to me, this was the collision of medicine and media, but they said, "Hey, would you take off your journalist cap and put on your surgeon's cap?" Knowing that I was a neurosurgeon. Of course I said, yes. I mean, he was dying. And so I went to the and he'd been shot in the back of the head. He needed to have a procedure known as a craniotomy, which is to remove the skull and decompress the brain. We didn't have any drills to do the operation because they didn't anticipate these sorts of injuries. So I sterilized the bit from the Black & Decker drill that we've been using to put up the tents. And I basically used that to remove that portion of bone. I took out the blood collection, the bone fragments, and the bullet fragments, and decompressed his brain. We were in a really, really tough and that open, and I used that to create the outer layer of his brain, this IV bag. I wrapped him up, Black Hawk helicopter comes and takes him away, which was Jesus. And real quick, I'll tell you, I come back to the States in 1 day 9, which I recognize as San Diego, and so it's over in Iraq. And I said, yeah, I mean, how do you forget operating on Jesus in the middle of the desert? And if you're it was the most amazing thing. First of all, I'd only seen him sort of beaten and battered on the desert floor. And this guy answers the door, and he's this handsome, strapping Marine. And he's young, and you forget how young the people are that safeguard our country. Because I know we got. But I sat down and I talked to them for several hours that day. It was just as healing to them as me operating on him in the desert. You know, they had to come to terms with it. I just sat there and asked them questions.